They came in silence, not with booming war horns or planet-shaking threats, but with the quiet, confident steps of conquerors who had done it 1,000 times before. The Varaxi Dominion, tall, grey-skinned beings with sunken eyes and tech that bent gravity like putty, descended upon Earth like it was just another outpost to break. The world governments barely had time to react. Satellites were hijacked in minutes. Communication blackouts spread like wildfire. Skyscrapers in New York and Tokyo vanished into blue beams of molecular dissolution. Cities didn't fall, they simply ceased to exist. The Varaxi didn't ask for surrender, they didn't even speak. They acted, assuming humanity would crumble just like every species before them had. They thought wrong. What they didn't understand, what they never bothered to research, was that humans weren't rational when they were scared. They didn't calculate their odds like the Varaxi expected. Number Wen backed into a corner, humans broke their own rules, rewrote laws of engagement, and bled just to make a point. The first real blow came from a backwater resistance cell in the ruins of Berlin. They weren't trained soldiers, just engineers, ex-Marines, and a pissed-off high school chemistry teacher named Jamal Briggs. They cobbled together old anti-air missiles, hacked their way into Varaxi drones using a patched-up toaster's CPU, and blew up an entire command ship from the inside using fertilizer and scrap uranium. The galaxy was watching. Quietly, in the shadows of the interstellar net, trillions of beings observed the feed. Varaxi propaganda cameras were everywhere, broadcasting what was supposed to be a swift, humiliating subjugation of a primitive race. Instead, they saw a soldier bleed out, smiling after nuking a Varaxi troop transport with a shoulder-fired railgun he made in his garage. Then came what history would later call the Krakow Uprising. 10,000 humans, half of them kids and elderly, held a city for 11 straight days, with barely any weapons. They used kitchen knives, fire hoses, even bricks. Every time a Varaxi stepped onto the streets, they never returned. The Dominion had shields and pulse rifles. Humans had rage, and it was catching fire across the planet. Still, humanity paid the price. Cities were vaporized, oceans boiled. The moon was cracked on day 72. But Earth didn't fall. For every million dead, 2 million rose, screaming for blood. What the Varaxi didn't understand, what the galaxy had forgotten, was that humans had a long, proud history of making hell out of hopelessness. The turning point came with Commander Zara Kincaid. She wasn't born in a war zone, she was a linguist from Melbourne. But when her family was flash-fried by an orbital bombardment, something snapped. She united resistance cells under one banner, Project Inferno. Her message was short, recorded in a bunker full of smoke and flickering lights. "You didn't give us time to talk, so now you'll hear us through fire." That video went viral across the galaxy. It wasn't in Varaxi tongue, it wasn't translated, it didn't need to be. Every species watching understood one thing: humanity was done begging, done reasoning, done fearing. Project Inferno's first operation detonated a chain of reactors under Moscow that tore a Varaxi mothership in two. The explosion's light reached the edge of Mars. The Dominion had never seen a species use their own cities as traps. Their commanders called it savage. The humans called it Tuesday. And still, Earth burned, but so did the Varaxi, bit by bit. One ship, then a fleet. One command post, then a planetary relay. The skies above began to shift. For the first time, Varaxi screamed, and the galaxy kept watching, no longer in amusement or pity, but in terror. By the time the 100th Varaxi ship fell from orbit, the stars above Earth were no longer a silent curtain. They were graveyards. Metallic corpses floated where once the Dominion's banner had flown unchallenged. Humanity, bloodied and limping, had turned their homeworld into a furnace, and the Varaxi were learning what it meant to burn. But fire alone wasn't enough. Not yet. Commander Zara Kincaid knew the tide had only just begun to turn. Earth was still bleeding out. The air was toxic in half the hemisphere. Global infrastructure had collapsed. Supply chains were shattered. Entire countries were nothing more than coordinates on old maps. But what humanity had left, what they would always have, was vengeance. The galaxy had watched humans from afar for centuries, labeling them unpredictable, emotionally unstable, too violent to ever join the interstellar community. And in their arrogance, they had decided Earth would be an easy target. The Varaxi had called it a soft demonstration of power. Zara made sure the universe understood exactly what that decision had cost. She gathered what was left of the United Nations emergency satellites and redirected them to broadcast uncensored footage of the war, not just to Earth, but to every known planet and colony connected to the galactic net. No polished speeches, no spin. Just raw feeds, a mother holding her child's charred remains, a soldier screaming into the camera as he detonated his own heart rigged with explosives to take down a walker mech, a little girl writing "We fight" in ash on a city wall. The effect was immediate. On distant worlds like Nothrix and Valari Prime, people sat in silence, watching as humans, primitive, emotional, backwards humans, refused to die quietly. Species long subjugated by the Varaxi, cowed into submission, began to stir. Pirate channels began replaying Zara's message on loop. Underground forums were flooded with the Inferno symbol, a flaming earth wrapped in barbed wire. The Dominion tried to suppress the broadcasts, but it was too late. You can kill a man, but you can't strangle an idea that's already in someone's bones. Zara's next move shocked even her closest commanders. Project Inferno went off-world. They hijacked a derelict mining freighter, nothing special, just an old junker from before the war, and refitted it with stolen Varaxi propulsion. The thing looked like a space coffin, but it flew. And on its first mission, it slipped past 3 Dominion cruisers and dropped a payload into the heart of the Varaxi relay station on Luna 7. The station didn't just explode, it collapsed. In its place, a singularity bloomed, ripping the local space apart. The shockwave shattered Varaxi communications for 30 light years. Zara called it a whisper into their gods. The Dominion was furious. Their retaliation came fast. Over 30 plasma strikes leveled parts of Brazil and the west coast of Africa. But for each retaliation, humans struck back harder. They had nothing left to lose, and that made them unstoppable. In a makeshift war room dug beneath what remained of Geneva, Zara faced her team, men and women with scars, eyes too old for their faces, and hands stained with oil and blood. "We're not fighting to win anymore," she said, voice raw. "We're fighting to break them." Her eyes moved to the hologram flickering above the table. It showed a Dominion command center orbiting Denvaris 9, a supply route critical to Varaxi reinforcements. Taking it out would cripple their ability to wage war across 4 sectors. But the price was almost guaranteed death. "We're not gods," Zara whispered, "but we're the monsters they woke up. Let's make them wish they'd let us sleep." A silence followed, then nods, one by one. Outside the bunker, the wind howled. The sky, once thick with Varaxi ships, was thinning. And for the first time in 100 days, the stars began to look like home again. The assault on Denvaris 9 wasn't just reckless, it was suicidal. Zara knew that. Everyone did. The Dominion's orbital command station was one of their oldest strongholds, built into an artificial moon the size of Australia and wrapped in defense fields that could shred a cruiser before it finished blinking into real space. But humans didn't play fair. They didn't follow the rules. They sent in the Hound. It wasn't a ship, not really. It used to be the SS Alexandria, a decommissioned Earth freighter rusting in orbit before the war. Inferno engineers stripped it down, rebuilt it with stolen Dominion armor plating, and loaded it with a stolen quantum core and enough high-density explosives to crack a planet's crust. At the heart of it sat one man, Lieutenant Elias Voss. Voss had volunteered without blinking. He was already dying. Exposure to plasma fallout in the Krakow uprising had left his insides cooking slowly, terminally. He didn't want to rot in a hospital bunker. He wanted to make noise. So they let him. As the Hound slipped through a worm corridor, its transponder blasting nothing but old Earth rock music on all channels, Elias Voss lit a cigarette and smiled into the onboard feed. His last message wasn't a speech. No one needed speeches anymore. He simply said, "This is for my daughter, you alien fucks." The feed cut to static. 3 minutes later, Denveris 9 ceased to exist. No wreckage, no survivors, just a growing ring of cosmic dust spreading slow and wide across a dozen sectors. The detonation was visible from orbiting moons light years away. The Hound had done more than destroy a station. It had ripped a hole in the Dominion's command web, severing their supply line, communications, and field control across the entire quadrant. The galaxy panicked. For centuries, the Varaxi Dominion had ruled with silent efficiency. They didn't scream or threaten. They simply erased. And now they were the ones being erased. By what? A species that hadn't even mastered interstellar travel? A race of mudslingers with no central government, no advanced AI, no order? The illusion of Varaxi invincibility shattered. But Earth didn't celebrate. There was no time. The retaliation came swift and cruel. They called it the Purge of Wounds. 3 Varaxi dreadnoughts, each over 50 kilometers long, descended into low orbit over Southeast Asia and began a methodical burn. Not a military strike. A message. Millions died in hours. Rivers boiled. Cities turned to glass. The Earth cracked along new fault lines. And in the middle of that chaos, Zara stood, watching the live feed, fists clenched, jaw tight. She didn't cry. Not yet, because vengeance required a clear head. In the weeks that followed, Inferno spread underground like wildfire. Every broken satellite dish, every decommissioned radio tower became a node in the human web. Civilians became scouts. Children smuggled data drives in their shoes. Old women cooked for field units operating beneath collapsing buildings. A world of ash became a world of rage. Then came the traitor broadcast. A Varaxi scientist, Kavaroon, defected live on the galactic net. Shaking, shivering, and speaking broken English, he stared directly into the camera. "We were told humans were beasts, that you would scream, fight, and die. But you scream and live. You burn and grow. I was wrong. We were all wrong." He held up a data cube, Dominion secrets, battle strategies, planetary weak points. And then he added, voice cracking, "You don't need to win. You only need to hurt us until we can't keep going." Zara stared at the footage in silence. Then she nodded. Just once. They didn't need to win this war like other species did. They just had to drag it out, make every inch of conquest cost the Dominion 10 times more than it was worth. Bleed them until they couldn't justify the price of domination anymore. It wouldn't be glorious. It would be ugly. It would be human. Smoke no longer bothered the lungs of those who had survived this long. It was part of the air now, baked into the sky, soaked into their skin, lodged behind their teeth like bitterness. The Earth wasn't healing. It was transforming. And so were the people. Commander Zara Kincaid stood atop a gutted skyscraper in what used to be Singapore. The oceans had pulled back, poisoned and hot, revealing cities lost beneath the waves. The Varaxi had tried to bury humanity under rubble and silence. Instead, they had uncovered a more terrifying version of it, one that did not forgive. Below her, a dozen makeshift warships, half spacecraft, half flying scrap heaps, were being prepped by technicians in mismatched gear. Soldiers with plasma-scorched armor mixed with denim jackets moved with fierce purpose. Civilians welded armor onto trucks, hacked into Dominion relays, and taught themselves to fly with simulators made from old game consoles. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were engineers of vengeance. Zara didn't sleep. Not much. When she did, she dreamed of fire and the sound of Elias Voss's voice. She still heard it, sometimes, echoing in her skull like a prayer made of grit and grief. His sacrifice had shifted something in the war. Not tactically, spiritually. It proved that one man could kill a god. So now they were building more gods to kill. Project Inferno had grown beyond Earth. Defectors from across the stars were reaching out. A Cravery medic who'd witnessed Varaxi slaughter of peaceful colonies. A Wernick captain whose crew had been dissected for refusing orders. Even a Threxian warlord, once loyal, now feeding Inferno fleet routes and planetary weaknesses. They all came with the same message. We believed in the Dominion, but we believe in you more. Zara hated being seen as a symbol. She didn't smile for the cameras, didn't deliver hope-filled speeches. Her power came from her rage. And rage, when given direction, became a weapon sharper than any blade. So when the opportunity came to strike at a Dominion breeding vault, a facility where Varaxi engineered their soldiers in sterile, emotionless rows, she didn't hesitate. It was located deep in Sector 18 Zeta, on a planet called Corval Prime. Fortified, remote, guarded by 3 Dominion fleets and an atmospheric defense mesh that melted most ships before they entered orbit. No one had ever even tried to hit it. Zara's response? Then we'll be the first. Operation Bloodveil was born in secret. Only 27 humans and 3 alien allies would take part. All volunteers, all marked for death. The goal wasn't destruction, it was infection. To get inside, broadcast the atrocities happening there, show the galaxy what the Varaxi called Genesis programming, and force the universe to stare at it, to see what they allowed. The team was led by Major Lennox, a quiet man with half his face replaced by cybernetic implants, courtesy of a plasma round in Nairobi. His second was Juno Malik, once a pilot, now a saboteur whose laugh could shake a bunker. They boarded the Wraith, a ship built from stealth composites and experimental warp tech smuggled out of a dead lab in Siberia. Its hull was invisible to most sensors, its crew invisible to mercy. As the Wraith breached Dominion space, Zara stood in the command center back on Earth, eyes locked on the fading signal. Everyone knew it was a one-way trip. No rescue, no return, just truth and blood. 30 hours later, the feed came through, and what it showed burned across the stars. Rows upon rows of engineered Varaxi clones, suspended in glass vats like meat waiting for war. Automated programming machines whispering commands into their undeveloped minds. Hate the weak. Obey without question. Kill without guilt. The broadcast lasted 13 minutes before the signal was lost. In those 13 minutes, millions across the galaxy watched the Dominion's mask fall. Some looked away, but many did not. Protests broke out on Varaxi-controlled worlds. Small uprisings flared like sparks. Species once afraid to whisper dissent now screamed it from their rooftops. It wasn't just a human war anymore. It was becoming a reckoning. And on Earth, Zara finally closed her eyes and let the tear fall. Not for loss, but for what was coming. The universe didn't shift all at once. It tilted slowly, violently, like a dying beast fighting to stay upright. But the balance was breaking, and it was because of one unthinkable truth. Humanity wasn't supposed to survive this long. The Dominion had expected Earth to fall within a month, 3 at most. It had been nearly a year since the first strike now, and instead of submission, they'd found themselves in a war of attrition with a species that didn't understand surrender. After the Bloodveil broadcast, silence gripped the galaxy. Not fear, shame. Systems that had remained neutral were suddenly re-evaluating. Black market brokers on Eris 4 refused to sell Dominion supplies. Merchant guilds stopped honoring Varaxi contracts. Even mercenaries, once proudly flying Varaxi sigils, began turning up dead, weapons stolen, their employers never named. But it wasn't just external pressure that was squeezing the Dominion. It was internal rot. Zara had planted seeds in places no one expected, not just through propaganda but through alliances built in shadows. For every human soldier dying in the trenches, a dozen more were smuggling data, intercepting communiques, whispering promises to the Varaxi's own people. They'd assumed fear was control. Zara taught them fear could mutate. One of those mutations came in the form of a Varaxi sub-commander named Thularen Krex. Loyal for 40 years, decorated, trusted. Until he opened the bay doors on High Command's main supply convoy over the planet Dothan and jettisoned half their critical tech into the sun, then defected with his remaining crew. His message was brief. They told us humanity was savage, but it's not savagery to fight back. It's dignity. Zara watched the clip in her cold, underground command room. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The Dominion was bleeding loyalty, and it was a wound they didn't know how to stitch. But the price for that wound came in bodies. In Johannesburg, a Varaxi retaliatory strike turned every hospital into dust. In South America, they dropped biocapsules that infected entire regions with liquefying fever. Children died holding their parents' hands, skin melting into the dirt. These weren't strategic strikes. They were punishments, blind swings of a dying empire. Zara had to make a decision. Hope was a dangerous thing. Too much, and people became reckless. Too little, and they gave up. So she crafted what would later be called the Hell's Gambit, a plan so unthinkable that even her generals argued against it. The objective? The Dominion's throne world, Zel-Tor-Ka. Not to invade, to touch it, to show the galaxy that even the heart of the beast wasn't safe anymore. It was impossible. Guarded by orbital rings, mines, fleets, automated defense networks, Zel-Tor-Ka hadn't been penetrated by an enemy in 10,000 years. No one even dared map it. But Zara didn't need to destroy it. She just needed to leave a mark. Operation Hell's Gambit was led by a trio of ships, not warships, freighters gutted and rebuilt for stealth. They carried no armies, only 3 strike teams. At their core, explosives made from repurposed Dominion tech, rigged to detonate on neural signature rather than timer. It was suicide tech. There would be no countdown, no escape. Each soldier implanted with a trigger node. If captured, they'd light up before interrogation. And still, they volunteered. As the fleet disappeared into the folds of slip space, Zara turned to her aide, a young comms officer named Leon, who'd been mute since his sister died in the Manila burn. He tapped his holoslate and showed her a single word. "Why?" Zara stared at it, then whispered, "Because they still think they're untouchable. We're going to scar their throne, not to win, to haunt them." The final report came 4 days later. A fireball over Zel-Tor-Ka, a single statue, the eternal conqueror, blown clean off its pedestal, reduced to ash. A Dominion parade interrupted by chaos. No mass destruction, no siege, just humiliation. The message was clear. Nowhere was safe. The footage of the Eternal Conqueror's decapitation played across 1,000 outlaw feeds, pirate broadcasts, and stolen signal loops. It wasn't dramatic. No epic soundtrack. No slow-motion hero shots. Just a silent explosion over Zel-Tor-Ka, a symbol of Dominion pride crumbling into ash, and the sound of alarm sirens screeching in a language no one wanted to hear again. The statue was older than most civilizations, a towering obsidian monument meant to remind the galaxy that the Varaxi never lost. And now? Now it was a pile of scorched rubble surrounded by panic. Hell's Gambit hadn't just succeeded, it had unveiled the truth. The Varaxi weren't gods. They bled. They screamed. They could be touched. And that simple truth was all the galaxy needed to erupt. Riots broke out in dozens of Dominion-controlled systems. Slave species revolted. Low-tier soldiers refused orders. Supply convoys vanished without trace, some hijacked by insurgents, others destroyed by their own escorts turning rogue. Even the silent allies of the Varaxi, the ones who profited in the shadows, began pulling away. No one wanted to back a god that could be toppled by a species still boiling water to cook. But Earth paid for the blow it had delivered. Within a week of the Throne World attack, the Dominion deployed something new. Harvesters, not warships, not mechs. These were quiet machines the size of cities. They didn't shoot. They absorbed. Dropped into fertile land zones, they sucked the life out of the soil, poisoned the wind, collapsed ecosystems like falling lungs. Africa, India, the Americas. They were scattered like seeds of rot. And the worst part? No known weapon could destroy them. They had living cores, biological processors wrapped in quantum shielding. Shooting one only made it dig deeper. Entire resistance teams vanished trying to bring just one down. Zara stared at the reports, rage clawing behind her ribcage. This wasn't about conquest anymore. This was extinction by starvation. The Dominion was going to choke Earth to death. So she summoned one of the last ghosts of the old world, Dr. Reese Calder. Calder had once been a theoretical physicist, had a Nobel Prize. Also had a nervous breakdown live on global broadcast when his daughter was vaporized during the Sydney Pulse. After that, he vanished into an underground lab somewhere in Greenland, building nightmares disguised as science. He emerged now, wild-eyed, coughing blood, and holding a data slate like it was a holy relic. "I can't destroy the harvesters," he said, his voice gravel-soaked in whiskey and grief. "But I can poison their guts." He had developed something called the Widow virus, a bio-nanite hybrid that mimicked the neural link of Dominion tech. It couldn't break through the shielding from the outside, but if someone got inside a harvester, if someone fed it the virus from its core, it would eat itself alive. The mission was named Widow's Waltz, 10 infiltration teams, no support, no chance of survival. The only guarantee was pain. Zara didn't ask for volunteers. She just stepped forward and said, "Put me on the first team." Her generals begged her not to go. Earth needed a leader, a symbol. But Zara was done leading from behind. She wasn't a symbol. She was a weapon, and she needed to be aimed at something worth dying for. The night before launch, she sat alone in her bunker. Liane, her mute aide, brought her a tablet. It played an old Earth clip, grainy footage from before the war. A girl in a field, laughing. Zara's sister. She watched it until the battery died. Then she stood up, armed herself, and boarded the transport. Above, the sky boiled red as another harvester descended. Below, humanity sharpened its final blade. The drop was brutal. No sleek descent. No elegant touchdown. Just fire, metal, and screaming gravity. Zara's transport slammed into the earth 3 kilometers from Harvester Unit 9, its hull tearing open like a tin can under a god's heel. Alarms howled. Shrapnel split 2 crewmen in half before the straps even loosened. By the time Zara crawled from the wreckage, her left arm was dislocated and her helmet's visor was cracked down the middle. But she was alive. And that was enough. Around her, the remaining members of Team Widow 1 dragged themselves from the smoldering debris. Juno Malik, bloodied but grinning through her broken teeth, handed Zara a pulse rifle like it was coffee. "We walkin' or dyin', boss?" "Both," Zara muttered, popping her shoulder back in with a grim hiss. "Let's go." The harvester loomed on the horizon like a god's tombstone. 400 meters tall, pulsing with blue light, roots of blackened metal stretching into the ground like claws. It didn't move. It throbbed, as though breathing in the Earth's pain. They had 12 hours to reach it and deliver the widow virus into its neural core. After that, orbital scans showed a Dominion strike team en route. Ticking clock. No backup. Just anger and the ghost of hope. The approach was a nightmare. The terrain around the harvester had warped. Glass plains where forests once stood. Pools of sludge that hissed when touched. The deeper they went, the sicker they became. Vomiting. Nosebleeds. Some heard voices whispering. The harvester didn't just harvest matter, it unraveled minds. 3 team members collapsed before they even reached the perimeter. One put a bullet through his own skull after whispering, "I saw her. In the dirt." Zara didn't blink. She couldn't afford grief. Only rage kept her upright. They breached the outer shell using stolen Varaxi plasma torches. Inside, the air felt wrong. Warm and wet, like the belly of a dying animal. Walls pulsed with bioelectric nerves. Machinery writhed as if alive. It wasn't built. It was grown. Every step forward was like walking deeper into a nightmare, sculpted by pain. Zara led the way. They reached the core chamber with 4 soldiers remaining. Juno, Calder's assistant, Mira, just a teenager with eyes too old, and 2 others too exhausted to speak. The core pulsed in the center of the chamber, a sphere suspended in nothing, surrounded by spiraling veins of code and bone. It looked like a heart trying to beat itself apart. Zara approached it and pulled out the vial containing the widow virus. It shimmered, black and silver, humming with Calder's mad brilliance. "Any second thoughts?" Juno asked quietly, like they were in a church made of nightmares. Zara didn't answer. She pressed the injector into the nearest neural port and squeezed. For a moment, nothing. Then everything changed. The harvester screamed. Not mechanically. Not through sirens, but psychically. A howl of agony that shook the marrow in their bones. Blood poured from everyone's ears. Mira collapsed, seizing. Juno screamed and fired into the walls out of instinct. The machine twisted violently, its flesh tore open, releasing clouds of nanite ash. Lights blinked out. The floor cracked. Black sludge poured from the core like bile. Zara's comm crackled. Not with Dominion signals, with Earth's voice. "Commander Kincaid, signals spreading. We're seeing cascading failure across 6 harvesters. Virus is working. I repeat, it's working!" But there was no joy in Zara's face. Only calm. She turned to Juno and the others. Time to leave. But there was no exit. The tunnel they came through had collapsed. The harvester was dying, folding in on itself. The ground shook violently. Juno looked at her. "Guess we walk out through hell." Zara smiled. "We've lived there long enough." They ran, through collapsing arteries of alien tech, through flames and bone, past ruptured conduits spraying acid and cables that lashed like dying snakes. 2 more soldiers didn't make it. Only Zara and Juno burst through the outer shell moments before it imploded. The harvester didn't just collapse, it devoured itself, like a wounded beast chewing off its own leg. The earth split open, swallowing the machine whole in a quake that was felt across 3 continents. Zara rolled onto her back, gasping. Juno lay beside her, coughing blood and laughing like a lunatic. Above them, the red sky flickered and cleared. For the first time in a year, Zara saw stars, real stars, not through smoke or fire, just light. And somewhere in orbit, another harvester fell silent. The stars didn't lie. One by one, the harvesters died. Some went quietly, lights dimming, roots retreating like withered limbs. Others convulsed, collapsing in violent spasms that tore holes in the crust of the earth. Each death sent seismic ripples across the Dominion's grip, shaking loose whatever illusion of control remained. The widow virus was spreading faster than anyone predicted. Calder's creation was more than a weapon. It was a plague of retribution, rewriting the code of Dominion machinery, corrupting their sacred networks, poisoning their precision with the chaos only humans truly mastered. In just 3 weeks, 35 harvesters were gone. And the rest? They were fleeing. Varaxi Command issued orders to withdraw planetary suppression units from Earth's surface, not to regroup, to retreat. An act so unthinkable it sent waves of panic through their own ranks. Dissent boiled over, civil infighting erupted in their outer colonies. Entire fleets turned rogue. A 1,000-year-old chain of dominance was unraveling in real time, and at the center of it was Earth, scarred and screaming, but undefeated. Zara Kincaid lay in recovery beneath a makeshift field tent in what remained of rural Norway. Her body was broken, lungs burned, ribs cracked, one leg fused with a titanium brace after being crushed beneath falling debris. But her mind, sharper than ever, her name now echoed in places she'd never dreamed of, not just on Earth, but in systems ruled by fear, on prison moons, in slave mines, in the back channels of alien markets and blacklist mercenary networks. Zara the Firewalker, Zara the Unbroken, Zara the human who made the gods bleed. And yet she didn't care for titles. She only wanted to know one thing. "Is it over?" she whispered to Juno, who now ran operations in her place. "Tell me we finally killed it." Juno hesitated. "Not yet," she said, brushing dust off her bloodied coat. "But we broke its spine. It's crawling now, bleeding, losing friends, losing fear, and that's worse for them than death." Outside, children were playing. That sound had vanished for nearly a year. Now it was back, tentative and quiet, like the first green sprout rising from ash. Zara turned her face toward the sun. It was dimmer than before. The atmosphere was still poisoned in parts. Whole nations were gone. Cities reduced to names whispered in remembrance, but humanity remained, changed, hardened, glorious in its fury. Word came within hours. Dominion High Command had fractured. Half their leadership defected or vanished. The throne world's defenses were in chaos. Uprisings were growing like cancer across their empire, and across all known space, species once silent raised their heads. The Sonari overthrew their planetary governor with farming tools. The Avarak burned every Varaxi symbol in their capital and declared the era of resistance. And the Kravari. They sent a message to Earth. Just 4 words. "Your fire lit ours." Zara listened, then nodded. "Then burn everything they've ever built." Earth was no longer alone. Humanity had done the unthinkable. It had stood before a colossus, bloodied and broken, and refused to bow. Not with superior technology. Not with armies, but with madness, rage, sacrifice, and the unyielding, terrifying truth that when humanity brings the fire, it doesn't care who gets burned. The galaxy had watched Earth in terror. Now it watched in awe. And somewhere far away, deep in the cold void of retreat, the last Dominion warlord whispered the words that would echo for centuries. "We should have left them alone.